Hey, it's DJ here from Pro-Action, coming to you from our super secret remote testing location. Had to get out of Pennsylvania for a little while. Today I want to go through with you. I have 3 different shocks here. I have one Pro-Action shock, which is an 11-inch. I have one of brand L, one of our competitors, which is a 13-inch. And I have one of brand D, which is a 14-inch shock from one of our competitors. Just want to kind of go through today, show you some of the good points, some of the bad points from all 3 of them. Let you kind of make your own decision there, give you a little bit of an education what we're doing here. The first thing I'd like to look at is the spring. All 3 of these springs are a straight wound spring. What that means is once you get about an inch into the spring, from that point down, it would stay a consistent spring rate. For instance, this is a 150-pound spring. So once you get into that first inch, past that, it'll be 150 pounds the rest of the way down. This is 110, same thing. Once you get past that first inch, the rest of the way down will be 110 pound rate. This one, same thing. Once you get the first inch, the rest of the way down, the rate's gonna stay consistent. The difference being there are some springs out there that are called a progressive spring or progressive wound spring. When you see a spring kind of very similar to this one, but the first 3, 4, 5 coils are really tight together, then they start to space out the rest of the way down, that would be a progressive spring. What that means is the first inch is like this spring being a 110. The first inch of travel would probably be about 90 pounds. The second inch of travel will probably be about 95. Then you get it with 100. The deeper you get, the stiffer it would get until you reach that 110-pound rate about 50% through. Then it would stay consistent 110 from that point down. The reason they do that is they want it to be a little bit softer on the top for the smaller bumps. The deeper you get, help prevent bottoming. Depending on the situation, that works or may not work depending on the situation. With our 3-stage valving on the Pro-Action shock, we have a light stage, a medium stage, and a heavy stage. With that, we can't throw in a spring that has 3 different stages or 3 different weight variabilities on that way. Everything kind of gets too confused and starts fighting a little bit. So the straight rate spring, that's what keeps us consistent through the travel, and our 3-stage valving picks up the difference. These little different valving inside, all 3 of these shocks are designed a little bit differently, but the goal is the same. So I just kind of show you how each company or how each different engineer kind of, where they come up with the ideas and what their theories are. The next thing I'd like to talk about for you is the ease of taking the spring on and off. Sometimes you'll have to change the spring. If you gain weight, lose weight, you pick up a passenger, don't have a passenger, that kind of thing, or just need to change a different spring rate for your weight. On the Pro-Action shock, the spring goes on. We have a clip, little horseshoe-shaped clip, goes right on the bottom. At that point, then you bring your top collar down to tighten the spring. No big deal, pretty easy on that one. On brand L, they do it a little differently. They use a little bit longer spring with a little more preload, with some lighter valving. Now on this particular shock, it has a little nub on the top, so when you do stick it on there, it has a little hole that lines up with the nub. That way when you turn the adjuster on the top, it actually turns the whole spring. Pro-Action a little different. We don't have the nub. Brand D doesn't have the nub on it. Not really making a whole lot of difference, just a little bit as far as when the spring turns. Really doesn't make a bit of difference there. This is what holds your spring on the bottom. This goes on here, clips onto the bottom of the shaft here. That's what holds your spring. To change the spring, you need to back this off as far as you can, put this in a spring compressor. Once you get that compressor, there's a little nut under here. Hold that nut. This top piece, the clevis, will actually screw off. You drop this down over the top, put the clevis back on. It does the job, not very convenient, not very quick. On brand on brand D, kind of similar situation. Spring goes on. This piece comes down over, a little easier here. Once that comes down over, you put a little circlip around the top. That comes up and holds it. That's what holds your spring on that one. Not a big deal to change it. Fairly convenient, not quite as convenient as a C-clip like we use, but still kind of does the job, won't hurt you any. The other thing you want to look at is as far as the adjustability of the spring. Pro-Action has a collar on the top, the threaded collar on the top. Brand L has a threaded collar on the top. Brand D also has a threaded collar on the top. You can turn the top there, move that up, down to change your spring preload. Brand D has a lock. Once you get it down so far, you can lock that so it won't turn anymore. Same with the Pro-Action. Once you get it where you want it set, you snug up that little set screw, keeps it from turning. Brand L does not have. So it brings it down. It kind of stays where you want it to. That's the reason that little nub's on there kind of stays in here. Their spring clip on the bottom has a washer to kind of turn on there a little bit. Then we have a rubber gasket that goes against the spring to keep the metals from touching. So once you get it on there, this will turn with the bottom of the spring. As the spring is compressing, it kind of turns with it. So that keeps it from actually moving the top. So that's kind of a neat thing on their end. The lock's there for a little bit of safety issue, just give you the little warm feeling that you know nothing's going to come loose. This is sufficient. I really haven't seen any problems with that. So that's a good thing for them. Out of the 3 shocks, Pro-Action shock, oil and nitrogen. Brand D, oil and nitrogen, has a nitrogen fill. You can see they both have the nubs, the trader where you can fill the nitrogen. Brand L, this is an oil shock. That means it's just straight oil, there is no nitrogen. The difference there being the nitrogen actually pressurizes the shock. So when you push the shaft of the shock in, there's pressure there that will push it back out. That gives it a little help coming back out. This one, if you push it down and stop, it's basically going to stay where it is. The spring, the movement of the swing arm is what moves the shock back and forth through the stroke. The nitrogen helps it run a little cooler. Like I said, keeps the shock a little smoother on the stroke a little smoother. Nitrogen shocks traditionally go, about $200–300 more than what the what a straight oil shock would be. Just a little more technology, little better in the long run. All 3 shocks have spherical bearings on the top and bottom. This is so when you put the bolt through, as the shock's on there, if it needs to bend a little bit, if it needs to move a little bit, the bearing will kind of move. It keeps the shock from binding up. All 3 have spherical bearings on the top and bottom. That's a good thing for all 3 of them. Ours are heavy industrial bearing. Not sure what these guys use. Ours kind of says the test of time. These may as well. I just don't know. I haven't worked with them that much as far as the bearings go with that much time on. So looking at the outsides, we have the adjuster is a little different. The spring clips are a little different. Just kind of everything does the same, just a little different design. Another thing externally we're looking at here is the bumper on the shock. So what the bumper does is as your shock's compressing, when you get clear to the bottom, instead of letting this metal seal head hit metal down here with that big hard smash, the bumper actually gives you a little bit of an extra cushion as it comes down. Now the bumper being that thick, you will use about 50% of that. It will smash down about 50% to help hold you up a little bit. That's the Pro-Action bumper. The Brand L, they use a little bit bigger bumper on theirs. Still pretty firm. I mean, it has a nice squish to it, but still pretty firm. The difference here being when you have this much stroke, this much travel to use, you're limiting yourself with a bumper. Let's cut that in half. So we're still down to here. So we have that much travel that bumper is not going to let you use at the end. So even though they say it's a 4-inch shock or 4.5-inch travel, depending on the bumper, sometimes you can't get that full range out of it. Just depends on what you're shooting for. So the Pro-Action bumper to squish 50%, pretty soft. Gives you a little cushion. This very nice and soft, gives you a little more cushion, but limits the travel. Then on Brand D, they have this little chunk of hard rubber on there. I don't know what that is as far as when it goes. It goes down, basically does the same thing. This is pretty hard, pretty stiff rubber. This one, they say it'll smash down 50%. I'm not quite buying it on that one. I think that's just, you're pretty much limiting your travel, maybe 20%, maybe 25% of a squish, but that one's just giving you a little more limited travel. So that's the external features of the shock. One more thing on the Pro-Action shock, you have your free bleed adjustment on the bottom. So clockwise is going to make it stiffer in the compression, a little bit slower in the rebound. Counterclockwise is going to make it a little bit faster in the rebound. Clockwise is going to make it a little bit slower in the rebound. So clockwise makes it stiffer and slower. Counterclockwise makes it softer, a little bit faster. Brand L has one adjustment on the top here. This is compression only. Being an oil shock, the nitrogen, there's no nitrogen in there to push the shaft back out, so you really don't have much to help control your rebound. Basically, this goes, the farther you turn it, the stiffer it gets, softer. Brand D, they have no external adjustments. They control what they feel they control on the compression strokes on an internal part, which we'll get to a little bit later. So the Pro-Action does have a little adjustment. Brand L has a little adjustment. Pro-Action covers compression and rebound. Brand L does just compression, and Brand D has no external adjustments other than the spring tension.